Wolf Theiss Soundshot. Insights and analysis from one of the leading law firms in Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe. Welcome to a new episode of the Wolf Theiss Soundshot Legal Tech Edition. In this episode, Trainee Kathrin Shahroozi from Vienna and Associate Lamis Kulenovic from Sarajevo will chat about the legal practice, how it is taught in universities and how it is actually practiced, especially in regard to the use of technology, and how they and other young lawyers can prepare themselves for a much more technology-driven future in the legal profession. Kathrin, who was nominated for the 2020 European Women of Legal Tech Award, works in competition and antitrust, and has been co-founder of the Legal Tech Initiative Austria in 2016. Lamis, who supports clients in corporate transactions as well as employment and data protection matters, is a driver of document automation and process optimization in the Bosnian market. Both of them have actively worked with the local ELSA chapters at their respective universities and continue to share their experience with law students and aspiring lawyers.
Hi, Lamis. Thanks for joining me in today's podcast. I know that you're already an experienced associate with Wolf Theiss in your practice group. And I wanted to ask you to reflect on how the things you learned at university and how you got educated at university prepared you for your job at a law firm or at Wolf Theiss in particular.
Hi, Kathrin. Thank you for having me. I started my career in law when I attended the University of Sarajevo's Faculty of Law. So I graduated in June 2014 and had my first work experience in September of the same year at the local law office, where I worked on corporate law matters, employment, banking, and finance, and whatnot. During my studies, I felt that I was lacking some practical experience, and that turned out to be correct because when I started working and when I was faced with my day to day activities and tasks, what I realized is that I have a lot of gaps that I needed to fill in order to do my job properly. So here I am working and I have my book based knowledge, but I'm lacking that practical approach to the things that I'm working with. For example, since I'm working a lot with the corporate law at my university, I had my corporate law classes, and I knew that in order to establish a company, you need to submit a request to the court along with other corporate documentation. But what I did not know was how those documents look or what additional documents are required by the court. Or I did not know how to fill out an application for establishing a company, etc. And that was something that I learned on the go while working at my law office. So I don't want to come off wrong, but I am aware that you cannot expect from young graduates and young lawyers to know everything once they start to work. But what would have been beneficial for me, and I think for many young lawyers and young graduates and students at their universities, is that they have some starting point and some advantage in knowing what will they be facing in the real world and in their day-to-day activities. So I recently just found out that at my university, the professors from criminal law cases have started to require from their students to have some 15 hours of practice at law offices. And that was not the case when I was studying. So that now gives me much pleasure that the professors start to value the practical experience that students should have. So, one thing else that I realized was during your studies, you are not aware of the fact how your workday will revolve around technology. And you do not realize that you will be very dependent on your computer. And in my current work experience, I've had the opportunity to work with some young lawyers and young graduates so far. And I've even had the privilege to mentor some of them and to introduce them to day to day work. What I was baffled with was the lack of basic computer skills with some people and with whom I've worked with, because they did not know how to properly use Microsoft Word, Excel, or any similar program. And I think that what I thought that should be a given, considering that we are working and living in 21st century, turned out not to be so given after all. And when you start to work, you have to have those basic computer skills. There are a must when you work and when you do your day-to-day tasks, because you are doing research, you're using internet, you're writing memos and whatnot, and everything is on your computer. During my studies, I don't know how it is with the situation in Austria, but during my studies, students did not have many opportunities for developing and using those skills that they probably learned at their elementary and high schools. And unless the students were doing essays, writing papers, doing research, which in my experience was not something that all students were willing to do during the studies, that is something that should also be looked into by universities and by professors in order for students to have the opportunity to also use those at least basic computer skills and to improve them, because they will not have the opportunity to exceed in their law profession if they don't have those basics. So I don't know, that was basically my experience in regard to my university skills. So I don't know what the situation is in Austria, and have you had any similar or same experience, or is it somewhat better with you?
No, actually, I totally agree. And when you listed your experiences, I found myself um, comparing that to my situation as a current law student. I use my computer, of course, at university to take notes and to write essays. And you said before that, like when you work with young lawyers or with aspiring lawyers, that sometimes this is something people lack. And I have seen that in colleagues as well, that basic, let's say, Microsoft Office functions might be some kind of difficulty. And when I first got into touch with legal tech and when I first heard about it, I was shocked to hear that there is technology out there that might even, and my first experience with legal tech, to be honest, was in a presentation, and it was kind of shocking because the uh, presenter talked about how legal tech will overtake the workforce, and that future lawyers and law students right now should look elsewhere for jobs because technology is there to take it. And I was shocked, I was baffled, and I was frightened, to be honest, to imagine a world where technology would do the job that I'm currently training to do. But then I see in my day-to-day business, working at the law firm and studying at university, how basic the technology is we still use, in compared to the revolution that was promised to me, or at least the picture of a revolution that was painted for me. And I wondered where education might even fail us to prepare us for this, because in my day-to-day work, I work with basic computer functions. I work, of course, with Word. I work with Excel a lot, PowerPoint and stuff like that. But there are also tools coming into play that even go a step further. So I work in competition law, where we use a lot of e-discovery software, for example, and those have improved over time, and there is automatization there, and there is the possibility of automatization there. And then there is document automatization for contracts as well. And I think, Lamis, this is something that you have worked with, and maybe could share some more information on how that process has worked out for you so far, because it's something that I know from a theoretical standpoint, and I also know from my work with legal tech in general, but something that I, in my day-to-day work, do not use. So it would be great to hear a little bit of insight on how that works and what input you gain from that experience.
So, interestingly enough, my first contact with the document automatization process that you mentioned was when I joined Wolf Theiss. So, I joined Wolf Theiss in November in 2018. And then in January of 2019, I was sent by a partner at my office to attend the course on the document automatization process, which was organized by Wolf Theiss. And so I've been there at the firm for 2 months, and I was like pushed, so to say, into learning something new and advance that was supposed to make my work and the work of my colleagues more efficient, more easy. So what I think is important for young lawyers and graduates to understand is that in law, you have to be creative and you have to be ready to step out of your comfort zone, especially in the 21st century and especially in the times that we are living today. As of starting from 2020. So when I was pushed into document automatization process, I myself was eager to find out how I could benefit from that and from such technology. And I was surprised to find out that through learning new skills and going out of my own comfort zone, that can lead to some incredible things that could make your life more easier. The thing with legal technology is that it requires from both law firms and from young graduates and young lawyers and lawyers in general, regardless of their age, to be bold and to be ready to invest the time, the resources, the people, to reallocate their assets and their money into something that is at the beginning very, let's say, it's strange. For me, it was strange because when I did the document automatization process, it required for me to learn something new, and that is coding, which is something that lawyers do not do. And I was not familiar with that. But it takes time to improve yourself and to benefit from that work. But at the end, what you get is young lawyers having an opportunity to work more efficiently. And that way, I think it's even possible to overcome those experience and age barriers that usually tend to be present in law practice.
Yeah, I get what you're pointing at. In my work for the Legal Tech Initiative, I have made the experience that usually there is, let's say, the older generation, and I'm using air quotes for that actually, that is kind of hesitant to embrace the change because they have worked with things and have experienced them in a certain kind of way and are sometimes very set in their ways. But also, and they tend to look at digitization as something that is kind of focused on younger people. I do not think that this is completely right. Of course, the younger generation of lawyers are the ones who have to work longer with the changing industry naturally because their starting point is somewhat later on then. But digitization is something that requires a certain mindset and it concerns everyone, maybe in different areas. So for the more senior level generation in a law firm, it requires the willingness to change old processes, the willingness to invest time and resources into finding new models, to be open to adapt certain work processes and find new ways to, of course, shape the client's view and to sell certain innovations to the client. This is something that cannot be done by a junior lawyer, of course. And then for the younger generation, and I don't talk. when I talk about older and younger, I don't necessarily mean the age, but maybe the standpoint in where you're at in your career. For the younger generation, it requires a boldness to embrace different career paths. So going for a position in a law firm in the future maybe doesn't have to be just as an associate. It can be something that is more on a crossroads between technology and law. And for that, you might have to invest in your education. And we have talked about how university, and in particular university law schools and the legal profession, fails our youngest generation to prepare themselves for a world in which technology is a very important part of. And I have encountered this question so many times on how to prepare and how to work and how to go the extra mile. And this is something I have seen in my colleagues, and I have seen in students at my university, that they are absolutely willing to educate themselves further. But this might also mean that their studies, so their core studies of law, might take a bit longer. So the legal profession is something that is, in my opinion, highly competitive. You graduate from university and you want to get into a law firm. You are aiming for a good job, and there are lots of graduates next to you, and you have to set yourself aside from them. And there is already this high expectation on what you should be able to do. So you should have graduated in a, let's say, fair amount of time, and you should have done so with good grades at best. And then it's expected for you to have some sort of practical experience gained via internships, or maybe you have been abroad, studied abroad for a semester or two, and you should speak more than one language. So, of course, in Austria, German is a must because it's our mother tongue. But then again, they expect you to also be fluent in English because it's something in an international law office that you need to be to interact with your clients. And then, of course, any additional language you speak is an asset. And this has been something that has been a standard for quite some years. So this is something that is expected, and law students are already used to that. They know that when they compete for jobs in high-powered law firms, that they have to show them that they can be an asset of sort. So when it now comes to legal tech and technology in the field of law, in the future, or even right now in the present, but in the not so distant future, something that would also become important is, for example, to know a coding language, or to have some sort of IT knowledge. And I don't think that lawyers will ever be expected to be coders. This is not something that you should be proficient in or perfect in, but it's something that you will have some basic understanding to interact with those people who will be the technical brains behind the operation. And I think and I hope that in the future, the legal profession will make room for people who have done, for example, interdisciplinary studies and have combined, for example, IT and law, something that on first sight isn't going together, but should. and there should be room for people who have knowledge in both, and are willing to help shape the future of the legal profession. And there will always be lawyers who do core legal work, and there will always be IT guys who do core IT. But there has to be some sort of interchange between those two groups. And I think it's important that we, as lawyers on one side, but also as educators and as students, like everyone who aims to be in the legal profession, thinks about how can I be part of digital revolution that is right now in 2021 in the midst of happening.
I agree with you completely. So, have you had any experience yourself during your studies where you had the chance to work on your legal technology skills. And if you have, or if you have not, what did you do, and what do you think would be recommended to young students and young lawyers to do in order to make themselves more competitive on the market and to have something extra to offer when applying for a job? What can be that factor that will differentiate them from other young graduates?
Well, I mentioned before when I first heard about legal tech, it was in 2015, 2016, so some years ago. And I heard a presentation, and it basically said that legal tech will overtake all of our jobs. And if you're studying law, you're preparing for a life of unemployment because this is useless studies. And it was a very drastic presentation. I was completely shocked and frightened, to be honest, on how to go about in my studies, and was very disheartened to enter into a field that according to this presentation has no future. So this is when I started to get into legal tech. I bought some books, I educated myself on the topic, and I talked to colleagues and friends about it. This was when we decided to start the Legal Tech Initiative Austria in 2016. Me and a friend together, because she had a similar experience, and we decided that this is something that is not present at university. This is not something that our extensive friend group knows about, and no one seemed to give a care about it. So it was just something that we were baffled to find out is not a topic of importance in Austria, or wasn't a topic of importance in Austria at that time. So I started educating myself on the topic, and it was hard because there were very few resources, and the resources that were available were very dubious sometimes. So we waded through lots and lots of presentations, of books, of blog entries and such, and we tried to find some ground to work at. But as time progressed, I had to find possibilities to be the one educating others about it. That's what we did with the Legal Tech Initiative, and we aimed to do that with law students in Austria. And when we got to know more and more players in Austria involved in legal tech or in digitalization in general, we also found that there is an extensive network in Europe. There is ELTA, European Legal Tech Association, that is trying to drive change Europe-wide, and we worked with them, and we tried to talk to Austrian universities about it, and we tried to have legal tech a bit more implemented in the curriculum at universities, something that as of today has not happened in the way we would have wanted it to be. I just had to understand at some point in time that as of today, if I want to be a driver of innovation, I have to do it myself. And I have to just be stubborn enough to not accept the status quo. And this is something I would recommend every law student or lawyer, regardless of age, to implement in their daily lives and to implement in their career, is to be bold, to try things, and to educate yourself on what's out there. Because when in our day-to-day life, we tend to be very narrow-minded at sorts, because we focus on what's at hand every day, and we forget to see the big picture. And I recommend everyone to step back from time to time, to just use Google and type in legal tech and maybe your country, see what's out there, to go to presentations, to go to panel discussions, to read about it, to attend maybe online seminars. There is, in the United States, innovation has been a bit more advanced than in good old Europe. So universities there tend to offer more seminars in that, and a lot of them are online and available. There are TED Talks available. The internet is a vast resource for building yourself some basic knowledge, and then from there find maybe an association in your country, in your hometown, that is already trying to implement change in that direction, and just be bold and stubborn and never give up. I think that would be something that I would recommend to law students at most, because they're the ones who will be drivers of change. But I also would recommend that to every lawyer, regardless of their age, regardless of their position, and to keep an open mind.
I love that. Unfortunately, I wasn't as bold as you are, and I have not been a driver in terms of implementing or introducing legal technology in Bosnia and Herzegovina or Sarajevo. But I have had the experience of enrolling myself, as I know you have, with the European Law Student Association. So I assume that there are many students that don't have the drive and the boldness that you have, but they can invest themselves into joining the groups and associations at their universities or any other nonprofit organizations they can benefit from, where they can, I don't know, write projects, attend seminars, and also to develop their communication skills, which down the line is very beneficial, especially if you're working at a law field. And the field of law is a very competitive environment. And I think it's very important for students to go that extra mile for their own benefit, to invest in themselves in order to be competitive on this market and to have that something extra to offer when they apply for a job. Also, for me, it has been, for example, involving myself in the legal technology. It has been a learning process, which I think is still not finished. There's so much to learn regarding the legal technology and its benefits in my work. But as with everything in your life, you just have to, it's not something that you learn and then you go home. It's a process that you need to invest yourself in order for those new skills to be adopted and to perfect them. But at the end, what you are left with is a great advantage that down the line can and will shape your future and give you that advantage comparing to your other colleagues, your the other graduates, and can lead to some new experience that you did not see that can happen while you were at the university and studying to be a lawyer. You were not aware that, okay, maybe I will have some products that I will benefit from and that will make my life more easier and more bearable. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, I think as a young lawyer, you should be brave. You should be ready to drive innovation, and you should be ready to make suggestions. But you should also be prepared that this comes with some kind of disappointment, because not everyone will greet your ideas with open arms. You will hear no more often than you will hear yes, but this should never stop you in trying to drive innovation, in trying to get new things done. When I started doing legal tech, when I started to invest more time and get my ideas out there, you cannot imagine the number of times I heard no, or we are not interested, or where I've heard people say, yeah, legal tech, it's just it's a trend that will fade. And I usually tell people, whenever I hear legal tech is just a trend, I usually tell people, yeah, that has been said about the internet too, but then look at us. I mean, it did not go away. And this is also something that has been said about the telephone some decades ago. So maybe it's something that we should just accept as a society, that technology is here and it's here to stay, and it's ever evolving, and so should we.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Wolf Theiss Soundshot. And don't forget that you can still apply for legal summer internships in our Vienna office until 14th of February 2021. For more information, you can contact us via email at soundshot@wolftheiss.com or visit our website at www.wolftheiss.com. You can also follow us here to receive further updates on developments in law and business from one of the leading law firms in Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe.